guys, and welcome back to Belle's Books. You might be surprised to see my face because I have managed to take an 8 to 9 month hiatus and I haven't posted on YouTube at all, which I am really sad about. So I thought it would be really fun to kind of kick off me posting on YouTube again with a big fat video. You can see by the number of books in the background that there is quite a lot going on, but I thought it would be really fun because I've seen some of these videos, I've watched them and I absolutely love them, to go through my physical TBR, which is all of these books. It's so embarrassing, I have a problem, I know. The first step to getting help is admitting that you have a problem. So these are all of the books that I have purchased or have been purchased for me as gifts or whatever, that I haven't read yet. I actually don't know how many there are. I'm going to count really quickly. So there are 45 books behind me, which is an absolutely ridiculous number. No one should have that many books that they haven't read. And the worst part is that I want to read every single one of them. Even when I was setting up this video, I was going through and categorizing them into genre because I thought that would be a useful way of organizing it. And I was reading the blurbs of them and I was like, these are good books, I really want to read them. But I just keep going to Waterstones and purchasing more books rather than reading the books that I have. And then don't even get me started on charity shops. You walk into a charity shop and a book's like £1, £2, and you're like, oh, go on then. And you know, someone will give you a book for free and you're like, all right. Like, you're not going to ever say no, are you, to a good deal? And then you end up in this situation where you have a ridiculous number of books that you haven't read, but you really, really need to get around to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this video into genres. So if there's a specific genre that you like more than others, then you don't have to watch the entire video. And all the timestamps will be in the description box down below. So first of all, we have scary books, thrillers and mysteries. Then we have science fiction, speculative fiction and kind of apocalyptic fiction. Then we have historical fiction. Then we have fantasy, and then finally we have realistic fiction, which is a big fat pile, and honestly was just kind of an encompassing term I use. There's some romance in there, but there's also some which aren't romances, and there's some which are a little bit older and some which are a little bit newer. I feel like realistic fiction is probably a good place to start, so we'll kick off with that. So our very first book is Marion Keyes' Grown Ups. I got this from a charity shop and apparently it's a signed copy. Oh my gosh, look at that! Crazy. So yeah, I have a signed copy of Grown Ups by Marion Keyes. So Johnny Casey, his two brothers Ed and Liam, their beautiful talented wives and all of their kids spend a lot of time together. Birthdays, anniversaries, weekends away, and they're a happy family. Johnny's wife, Jessie, who has the most money, insists on it. Under the surface though, conditions are murkier. While some people clash, other people like each other far too much. Everything stays under control until Ed's wife, Cara, gets concussion and can't keep her thoughts to herself and starts spilling out all of their secrets. Everyone starts wondering if it's finally time to grow up. So, very famous book, very popular. I wasn't particularly interested in reading it on its own because I'm not super into like realistic fiction about like middle-aged people and their families. For obvious reasons, I don't have a family and I'm young, I guess, so it's not particularly my favourite genre, but this was just so popular when it came out. When I saw it at the charity shop, I thought, oh, alright, I'll just grab it then. Next up, we have Sally Rooney's Beautiful World, Where Are You? Obviously, Sally Rooney wrote Normal People. I tried to read Normal People and I just couldn't get into it. The way that her books are written, without the punctuation and everything, really throws me off. But I saw this, I think at like Morrison's the other day, and it was on sale and I thought, I'll grab it because maybe I can, you know, just step it up and I'll get into this book. So this is about Alice, who is a novelist, who meets Felix, who works in a warehouse, and asks him if he'd like to travel to Rome with her. In Dublin, her best friend Eileen is getting over a breakup and slips back into flirting with Simon, a man that she's known since her childhood. Alex, Felix, Eileen and Simon are still young, but life is catching up with them. They desire each other, they delude each other, they worry about sex and friendship and the times they live in. Will they find a way to believe in a beautiful world? So yeah, I picked this up and then kind of read the blurb and had a similar thought where I don't love those like books that are like about the crises of people who are in their 20s/30s. I don't know why, I just find them a bit annoying. So I then didn't want to read it, but I probably should read it, or at least try, because I might actually really love it, you never know. Following on from that same theme, we have Exciting Times. So this is about a girl called Ava who leaves Ireland to make her own money, and she goes and teaches grammar to rich children in Hong Kong, and she gets a boyfriend, Julian, who is quite wealthy and lets her move into his spare room. And then she meets a woman called Edith, who she really likes, and exciting times ensue, apparently. So I got, let me tell you, I got 88 pages in before I just had to put this down. I found it really difficult to finish, and partly because it is kind of like that self-depreciating early 20s, late 20s crisis theme. Interestingly, Marion Keyes said that she loved this book, which is quite funny because I think that a lot of the themes in Exciting Times will probably be quite similar to Grown Ups, so maybe that's why she liked it so much, and that's why I can't seem to start either of them. Next we have Megan Nolan's Acts of Desperation. This is a romance. She's 23 and in love with love. She has an affair with a beautiful man, and then behind his perfect looks she uncovers a cruel streak. I just haven't got around to this. I think that I'm going to really enjoy this. I feel like it will probably be quite a dark romance and probably a little bit twisted. Then we have One Last Stop, which I was so excited to be released. Like, I actually waited for this release, and then somehow I just never picked it up. So this is a romance about a woman called August and a woman called Jane. So August lives in New York City, and she meets a woman called Jane on the train who seems like she stepped right out of the 70s in terms of like style and vibe and everything, and then you soon realise that Jane actually is from the 70s, and I guess it's kind of magical, but fantastical maybe, I'm not sure. I didn't put it in the fantasy pile because I feel like the main point is the romance. But jumping on the city vibe train, we have Paul McGlynn's Summer in the City. I picked this up from a charity shop because I thought it'd just be a fun little read. It's about a woman called Lucy who ends up homeless, husbandless, and she moves to South London, and then she meets her neighbours and kind of is drawn into their world, and makes friends and blah 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 blah. I thought it'd be quite a cute beach read, but I didn't end up taking it on holiday because I bought a whole bunch of other books to take on holiday. So yeah, I will be getting to this at some point. We have then got The Female Persuasion by Meg Wolitzer. So this is about a woman called Greer, who meets a woman called Faith, who is an influential and glamorous figure from the women's movement, and invites her into her life, and kind of changes her future from something quite stereotypical to something quite exciting. I can't wait to read this. I got this from a charity shop, and I think I'm really going to enjoy it. We then have Jodi Picoult's Plain Truth. I love Jodi Picoult. Her books always make me cry. And this is about Katie Fisher, who's Amish, who has a baby outside of marriage, and doesn't know what to do, and so she prays about it. She prays that it will just disappear, and when she wakes up in the morning, the baby's gone, and she has no idea where it's gone, but later on the baby's body is found, and so this is about that situation. I used to be really interested in the Amish when I was younger, so when I see a book about them I often get quite intrigued, simply because I find it really interesting to learn more about them. We have then got The Elegance of the Hedgehog by Muriel Barbary. My friend gave this to me and I haven't had a chance to read it yet. So this is about a concierge named Renee who works in an apartment building in Paris, and she basically prides herself on being more cultured than her employers despite them having no idea just how cultured she is. And then the death of one of the residents of her apartment building. Next up is The White Tiger by Aravind Adiga. So this is about a servant, philosopher, entrepreneur and murderer who works in a tea shop. We then have Osamu Dazai's No Longer Human. So this is actually written in the early 20th century, and it's basically about a man who feels like he doesn't understand other human beings, and he always kind of feels alienated from it. And I believe he also tries to commit suicide. This was originally written in Japanese, so this is another work in translation. Next we have The First Woman, which is about a teenager called Kirabo, and who wants to get to know her birth mother because she has no idea where she is. Her search will take her away from the safety of her prosperous Ugandan family, plunging her into a very different world of magic tradition and the haunting legend of the First Woman. So I'm really intrigued to read this because I think that it kind of combines realistic fiction with like myth and folklore, and that's the kind of genre and type of book that I absolutely love reading. Okay, I'm back. I stopped for a quick coffee break because I realised that this is going to take a while and I needed a coffee. I had a cup of tea, it wasn't enough. Right, so moving on to my next pile. My next pile is my fantasy fiction pile. So we don't have too many books here. We've got 5 fantasy books. I'll start with the one that's been there for the longest, which is Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Durr. So I absolutely loved All the Light We Cannot See, so my mum bought me this, I think for Christmas this year, but I haven't got around to it yet. So bound together by a single ancient text, the unforgettable characters of Cloud Cuckoo Land are dreamers and outsiders figuring out the world around them. So there are 5 different characters who live in different places and in different time periods. I did start this book, but it was a while ago, so I can't even remember what I have read of it. So I have absolutely no idea what this is like or how those stories interconnect and tie together. But I do know that I'm really excited to read this, and it actually is like super high on my TBR at the minute. I just need to pick it up and start again, which is always easier said than done. Next up, we have a book which I literally just picked up a couple days ago from Waterstones. I had a voucher. So Book of Night by Holly Black. So this is about a woman named Charlie Hall, who has spent half her life working for magicians. She's trying to distance herself from past mistakes, but she gets drawn back into that world of murder and lies. She's determined to survive, as all of these different types of people. She's determined to survive, but she has to fight all different types of people and battle all kinds of things. Obviously Holly Black is famous for her incredible fantasy writing, so I picked this up because I was in the mood for fantasy, and rather than read something I thought, why not get something new? And I knew that Holly Black would be a safe bet, so I'm really looking forward to reading this as well. We then have Susanna Clarke's Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. So the year is 1806, and this is the story of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, who are both magicians and who kind of get into a war between England and France, and everything that happens after that. I read Piranesi, absolutely loved it, devoured it, bought this immediately, and just never picked it up. Next up we have Mordew by Alex Phoebe. My dad bought me this. This is about a young boy named Nathan, who I believe is quite poor, and ends up being sold to someone called the Master, and the Master and him end up battling because Nathan has some kind of power that he didn't realise he had before. And then my final fantasy book is The City of Lost Fortunes by Brian Camp. So set in post-Katrina New Orleans, this is about a magician named Jude and how he tries to retire but gets drawn back into the world of magic after the New Orleans fortune god is murdered. And he has to kind of uncover the plot, find out who did it. It's a murder mystery basically, but is also fantasy of course as well, because there's all kind of magic. And my friend Hannah bought me this for Christmas, I believe. The science fiction pile is obviously the biggest pile. It's absolutely huge. We'll start with To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini, obviously author of Eragon. This is the signed copy apparently. Ooh, look at that! How nice! I've got loads of signed books apparently, I didn't even realise. So it's basically about a woman named Kira, who on a mission out to space accidentally discovers alien life, makes first contact, and then war and havoc ensue, and she's kind of the only one who can solve the problem. This is the kind of book that I just absolutely love, from the very premise to like the plot to the character. I really like the fact that the main character is also a woman, because I feel like this is the kind of book I like, but usually you get a male main character, which is fine, obviously. We then have Under Fortunate Stars by Rona Hutchings. I literally bought this last week as well, and when I was in Manchester for my brother's graduation, and then we popped into Waterstones and I saw this and I just thought the cover was so beautiful that I couldn't say no. So this is basically a kind of time travel space sci-fi book about two ships who kind of get stuck in a dead patch of space and then have to figure out why. But the two ships are from two different timelines, two different points in time, but their stories are interconnected, and they kind of have to get back on track. Next we have Water and Glass by Abby Curtis. I got this from a charity shop, and it is speculative fiction, and it is about a zoologist who is kind of managing some animals on a ship post-apocalyptic environmental disaster, and she kind of sticks to herself in the animal world, and then one of them escapes, and so she has to kind of enter the world of the ship and interact with other people. Next we have Diane Cook, The New Wilderness. This was shortlisted for the 2020 Booker Prize, which is why I bought it. I think I bought it on the recommendation of Sunbeam's Jess, who's on YouTube. I think I watched one of her videos and she read it, so I thought I would too. I feel like I've said this in a video before actually, and I still haven't got around to reading it. It's all about Bea and Agnes. They kind of live in this over-polluted world, and they have the opportunity to go into the wilderness, which is really dangerous but will hopefully be less polluted, and they're kind of dying in the city, and so some volunteers all go out into the wilderness on like this experiment basically. They decide to go with those volunteers. Yeah, so it's all about motherhood, it's all about man versus nature, and it's all about kind of that dystopian apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic world as well. So next up we have two books which are part of a series. So I read Scythe by Neil Shusterman, and then I bought the two next books in the series because I thought I was like gonna read them immediately, and then I didn't. I really liked the first book, I just then got distracted by other books. Basically I went on holiday and this didn't feel like holiday reading, like this didn't feel like something I'd want to whip out at the beach, you know? So I took more like beachy reads. So I basically took romances with me. Basically it's about a world where there's no more death. So instead you have these figures called scythes, and they are responsible for maintaining the right population, so they'll just kill people. And it's about two apprentice scythes and their story in short. We then have Star Wars Darth Plagueis. I went through a bit of a Star Wars phase. I watched all of Star Wars, like the Clone Wars, absolutely everything, and then I read like 3 or 4 Star Wars books one after another, and this was the one I was going to read next, but I never got around to it. Yeah, this is about Darth Plagueis, who's a Sith Lord, and Darth Sidious, and kind of their goals. They want to destroy the Jedi. Next up we have Dune by Frank Herbert. I want to love this book. I loved the movie. I tried to read this book before the movie came out, but I just couldn't get into it, and I don't know why. I found it quite confusing, which is so silly. This is about Paul Atreides when stewardship of Arrakis, which is a planet that controls spice, which is the most rarest and valuable substance in the universe. Well, he kind of gets stewardship of Arrakis. He must travel to the planet to protect his family, his people, and then, you know, conflict, war, death, dying, fighting. Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya. We also have The Rig by Roger Levy. So this kind of combines 4 different stories. There are 4 different plots which interweave one another. So there's a plot about 2 boys, there's a plot about a string of murders and a writer, there's a plot about a man who works on like a deep space rig, and there's a plot about a system in which God has been abandoned and social media has kind of taken over. So next up we have Cold Storage by David Koepp. So this is kind of apocalyptic dystopian fiction. There was a biochemical attack, and then an operative has to go and stop it from getting further out into the world, and quarantine this kind of disaster. But the man who wrote it was the screenwriter for Jurassic Park, Spider-Man, Panic Room, War of the Worlds and Mission Impossible. So he's probably a really good writer, or if he's not a good writer, he's definitely like good at plots, you know? We then have A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller. So this is 20th century science fiction about a monk who unearths a fragile link to a 20th century civilization. It's a handwritten document from the Blessed Saint Leibowitz that reads, "Pound pastrami, can kraut, 6 bagels, bring home for Emma. Could this holiest of relics hold the key to humanity's civilization?" I really want to read this. My friend Maria bought this for me and I really want to read this. Every time I read the blurb, I'm like, oh, this sounds so good. We then have Cursed Bunny, which is a genre-defying collection of short stories by a Korean author. So they're speculative fiction, science fiction, but also magical realism, which is why it's on this pile. So next up we have my stack of historical fiction I haven't read yet. First of all, we have The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. And this is set in 1945 and is about a 10-year-old boy called Daniel who picks a book from a library, and then as he grows up people become very interested in this book, and then people being curious in that novel, it kind of turns into a race to discover information about the author who died a while ago. We then have The People in the Trees by the same author who wrote A Little Life, which is so famous and so well known for being so devastating. I picked this up when I was in Waterstones in Manchester the other day because I loved A Little Life. It was heartbreaking and disturbing, yes, but also I loved the writing. The characters really drew me in. So this is set in 1950 and it's about a young doctor who goes on an expedition to a Micronesian island to search for a lost tribe. He kind of discovers the secret of this lost tribe, which is about immortality, and returns to America where he finds success. So it's fantasy, but it's also kind of historical, which is why it's in this pile. Maybe it shouldn't have been in this pile. Maybe it should have been in science fiction, or even fantasy. You know what? I'll come back to you. Then I've got Matrix by Lauren Groff, which is about Marie de France, who ends up being an abbess in England in the 12th century, I want to say. I was really excited to read this book, and I don't like the way it's written. I don't think it's very well written, and I really like the idea of bringing kind of the medieval world to life for modernity and us in the 21st century. I did my master's in medieval literature and I'm starting a PhD in medieval literature this October, so I'm all for that. Very passionate about it, very excited about it when I find a book that does it, but I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about this book. Then we've got The Golden Notebook by Doris Lessing, and this is about a woman named Anna who records her life in 4 different notebooks. The black notebook records her writing life, the red her political views, the yellow her emotions, and blue everyday events. But she's got a 5th notebook, the Golden Notebook, that ties everything together. So my mum bought this for me a while ago. Next I have The Perfume Collector by Kathleen Tesaro. So this is about a woman named Grace who finds out that she has inherited the estate of Eva d'Orsay, but she's never heard of this woman, which is really confusing. So she ends up travelling through Paris and into the world of Eva so that she can figure out exactly what the connection is and why she's inherited this, and ends up learning all kinds of interesting things. Then I have Sarah Winman's Still Life, which is set in 1944 Italy and is about a woman named Evelyn, who is a 64-year-old art historian, and Ulysses, who is a young English soldier. So they accidentally meet in the middle of war, basically, because they both end up in this villa for various reasons, and they transform each other's lives. Obviously it's not a romance, the age difference is crazy, but yeah, it's about beauty, love, families and friendships. Then I have Louise Eldritch's The Night Watchman, set in 1953, rural North Dakota, which is about Native Americans' rights to their land and how they kind of fought the battle and their identity, especially like against the US government. This book won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction last year, so it must be really good, and I am really looking forward to it. Lastly, from historical fiction, I have A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles, set in 1922, about a count who is branded an unrepentant aristocrat by a Bolshevik tribunal and is sentenced to indefinite house arrest. and he must now live in an attic room while Russia undergoes decades of tumultuous upheaval. Fascinating premise, set during a period of history which I'm actually really interested in. So I'm going to go through these ones first. So these are murder mysteries, thrillers, scary stories. Starting off with Death and Croissants by Ian Moore. My friend Georgia bought this for me. So this is a murder mystery. It is about a man named Richard who runs a B&B in the Val de Follet in the Loire Valley in France. Nothing ever happens to Richard, that's the way he likes it, and then a guest disappears, leaving only a bloody handprint on the wallpaper, and another guest, Valerie, persuades Richard to investigate the disappearance of this man with her. So yeah, I have started reading this. I only got it a few weeks ago, and I don't usually read murder mysteries, so this will be interesting. So we have The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley Heller, and so this is about a woman named Elle who goes for a swim after having a passionate encounter with someone who was not her husband the night before, and you kind of get these flashbacks, you get the story of the night before and the story of the present day, and I assume it all begins to come out. Next we have Slade House by David Mitchell, which is on the scary books pile because I think it's a little bit creepy, but it isn't a thriller and it isn't a murder mystery. So on one side of a high wall lies a narrow dank alley, on the other a sunlit garden, and between them a small black iron door. You just need to open it. Welcome to Slade House. That's all I know about this book. No more context is provided, but I do love David Mitchell. I loved Cloud Atlas, I loved Bone Clocks, so I thought I'd pick this one up as well. I then have Blood Orange by Harriet Tice, which I got free, literally free I'm pretty sure, from Amazon a while ago. So this is a thriller about a woman named Alison who has it all. She's got a loving family, she's got a career on the rise, she's just been given her first murder case to defend, but it's never as it seems, and I'm guessing something goes wrong. Then we've got Louise Candlish's The Other Passenger. This is about a person whose friend Kit goes missing, and they were supposedly the last person who saw them, so the police kind of start the investigation, but you don't remember seeing Kit the night before, but someone says that you did, and so you begin to question absolutely everything. Those are all the thrillers and scary books. I then have a couple of like other ones. So we've got a couple of kind of classics, and we've got The Travels of Marco Polo, which my aunt gave to me I think last week as a belated birthday gift. I've never read The Travels of Marco Polo, and this edition is especially beautiful. I then have Books v Cigarettes by George Orwell. Went through an Orwell phase a while ago, and I was really looking forward to reading this kind of selection of essays. I then have Working Hard, Hardly Working by Grace Beverley, because I'm starting a PhD in October, and I picked this up because I thought it'd be really good to kind of get some of the tips that she shares. So it's all about creating your own productivity method, making your routine work for you, understanding your value, and engaging in effective self-care. So I thought that that would be a really good thing to kind of get in the habit of doing and kind of learn about ahead of a period of time in my life where I'm probably going to be quite busy and I'm really going to need to like optimize my life, if that makes sense. So this is my physical TBR. All of these books, so many of them. I really hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed seeing all the books I've bought and not read yet. I hope that it has inspired you to maybe read some of these books, maybe read some of your own physical TBR, and I really hope that you just enjoyed listening to me chat along like this. I am so excited to be making more and more videos for you guys, so please do leave a comment down below if you have any suggestions of books that you would like me to review or videos you'd like me to make, because I'm getting back into it. And next week we have a really exciting video coming up. My friend Georgia and I are going to review Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid together, and I just can't wait for you to watch that, because honestly it's the funnest video. We chatted through absolutely everything. So this is your warning. If you want to watch that next week, then turn your post notifications on so that you can. So yeah, that's everything from me. Have a wonderful day, have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.